right, so yeah, why don't we get started? It is 4:04. So again, thank you all so much for being here today for our third tour retrospective program. And great to see again some familiar faces. A lot of you have been here for our last couple of events. For those who don't know, I am Jeremy D'Entremont. I'm the historian for the US Lighthouse Society. I also produce and host the Society's podcast, Lighthearted. And I think most of you are aware that the Lighthouse Society's executive director, Jeff Gales, is with us today. Say hello to the people, Jeff.
Hello, people.
And Jeff will be helping out with the to facilitate the question and answer portion of the program after we have the tour retrospective program. So we'll take questions when we get to that. We'll take questions in the chat and also verbally, and we'll explain how that works when we get to it. Excuse me. So in case you're not familiar with it, I will mention the chat right now. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, there is a chat option. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. You can click on chat and a chat, excuse me a second. Sorry. A chat window will open up and you can use the chat through the entire event. If you want to chat silently with other people in the room, you can chat to everyone. I see people that are doing it now. You can chat to everyone, or you can choose to chat with somebody in particular. So feel free to use that at any time during the event. And again, we'll use that when we get to the Q&A period. We'll use that to take some of the questions. Those of you who took part in our previous programs know that the presenter for those programs was Chris Brooks, who's one of the people who organized and has organized and led quite a few tours for the USLHS. Today, you're going to meet a family team, the Rowlands, who will be presenting a retrospective on their New Zealand tour that they led in 2019. And I'll introduce them and turn it over to them in a couple of minutes. I know that many of you are veterans of the USLHS tours. I don't need to tell you how special they are. They're a big part of what makes the US Lighthouse Society so unique and special. For people who aren't that familiar with the tours, maybe there's some new people here, it's important to note a couple of things. One is that the proceeds from the tours go to the Society's mission of supporting lighthouse preservation and education. So by taking part in the tour, you are helping to save lighthouses. Another important point is that when you take a USLHS tour, you often get access to lighthouses that aren't otherwise accessible to the public. The Society is able to make connections to get the lighthouses open, which is another big part of what makes the tour so special. And finally, it's also important to know that the tours are not just about lighthouses. The tours are designed to get a better understanding of the culture and communities in which the lighthouses are located. I took the England and Scotland tour in 2017. Skip Sherwood and Mary Lee Sherwood were the leaders of that tour. Skip was just giving Jeff a hard time a few minutes ago. He's here, and I think he's going to be doing at least one of these events coming up. And on that tour, we saw more than 60 lighthouses in about 20 days. We also toured some amazing castles and museums and other historic sites. Some people, be careful about unmuting yourselves. If you unmute yourself, be careful not to talk. We'd appreciate it if you don't unmute yourself until we get to the Q&A period. But anyway, so on the tours, like the England and Scotland tour I did, we saw some amazing castles and museums and other sites, had a lot of great food. So there's a lot more besides lighthouses. There's a lot of lighthouses, but there's also a lot more on these tours. So just a brief little bit on New Zealand before we start the retrospective. New Zealand is a small island nation with just over 4.5 million people in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It's about 1,000 miles long from north to south, has a landmass about the size of Colorado. It's made up of the North Island and South Island and a number of smaller islands. The two main islands are divided by Cook Strait. New Zealanders are affectionately known as Kiwis, from the flightless bird that's native to New Zealand and is their national symbol. English is the predominant language in New Zealand, with Maori being the native language. Maritime New Zealand owns and maintains the lighthouses and beacons that are outside harbor limits in New Zealand. Maritime New Zealand has 23 lighthouses and 75 minor light beacons. There are also some lighthouses that are controlled by local harbor authorities. All the lighthouses in New Zealand were destaffed by 1990. They are now fully automatic. About 16 of the lighthouses can be visited, but there is no, whoops, there is no access inside the towers. Getting access is a very special privilege. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our guides for today, the Rowland family. Jerry Rowland, who's kind of hiding in the back. There he is. Hi, Jerry. Jerry Rowland is retired Navy and a retired Marina port manager. He has been volunteering for the U.S. Lighthouse Society since December 2017. He has been planning all of the Lighthouse tours since then. He has been the tour leader on 7 tours in 2018 and 2019. Marjie Rowland, who is going to, I think, do the bulk, the heavy lifting today, most of the talking. Marjie is retired from Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, where she was superintendent of electricians and electronics and project manager. She has helped Jerry with planning tours the last 2 years and has been co-tour leader for 8 tours. Their granddaughter, Cassandra Rowland, hi Cassandra, has worked for the U.S. Lighthouse Society for the last 6 years at their offices in Hansville, Washington, performing administrative office duties, and she has helped lead 5 tours. So before I turn it over to them, I just want to mention that they're going to show a map showing the locations of the New Zealand lighthouses, and I posted that in the chat. The very first thing you'll see at the top of the chat is a link to the map. So if you want to download that, you can click on that link that's at the very top of the chat. You see where it says, has the link USLHS. If you scroll to the top, there's a link, uslhs.org/New Zealand 2019 map. Are people seeing that?
No, you need to share it, I think, to everyone.
Oh, did I? It is shared to everyone.
Just post it again.
I'll post it again. Give me a second here.
I do have it throughout the presentation now, so no worries.
Yeah, it is posted to everyone, but I'll do it again. Whoops, I just posted it to Bob Zimmon privately, but the first time I posted it to everybody, but I'll do it to everybody right now. Give me a second here. Oh, you know what? It says everyone in waiting room. That's weird. Why does it say everyone in waiting room? Everyone in meeting. There we go. Okay. Maybe I did say everyone in the waiting room before. Okay. Everyone should see it now. Do you see that? Does everyone see the link I just posted? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. So that is a link to the map that they'll be showing in the presentation, because before, people always asked for the map after the presentations. So there's that. So at this point, without any further ado, let me turn it over to the Rowlands. Here you go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. In New Zealand, the welcome greeting is Kia ora. So everybody say Kia ora. Now,
Kia ora.
I'm sure that you've all said it now. So now we're in New Zealand. We are in the wonderful world of New Zealand. In 2019, February, we spent practically the whole month doing this tour. But we're just going to do the north side today. That was the majority of the lighthouses. And that's the map that Jeremy was talking about. We started in Auckland, beautiful city. They have a sky tower there, similar to some of the towers in some of our major cities like Space Needle, etc. We stayed in the hotel right next to the tower. It's the red building you can see there at the bottom of the tower. And that's another view of it. What's nice about staying at that hotel is it has an escalator right to the tower, so you can go right there. The tower offers many beautiful sights, and they have a few restaurants up there as well. On the first day, we took a tour of the city. And they have a memorial park for Michael Savage, who was the 23rd Prime Minister of New Zealand and headed the first Labour government.
He's considered the first Labour Prime Minister that they had.
Yep.
And then there's the gardens. We went to the Winter Garden since we were technically there during the winter. There was statues and a bunch of different plants that are indigenous and local to there, as well as some imported.
Beautiful gardens with 2 hothouses. So now we're going to go to lighthouse number 1, and you can see 4, 5, and 6 is where Auckland is. And lighthouse 1 is over across on the other side of the island, hour and a half away. We did see beautiful scenery on the way, but this is the lighthouse. It is a replica that was built in 1874. This was put in place in 2005. But this has the original 3rd order dioptric drum lens. You can see there. Beautiful lens. And they've done a beautiful job. The organization that is put it together and does all the tours of preserving everything, and the inside of it is beautiful. This is the view from the lantern room, and this is the place where the worst shipwreck disaster in New Zealand history started or happened on February 7th, 1863. It was a beautiful summer's day, but the HMS Orpheus was approaching the harbor. The signalman on shore was trying to signal to him that he was going off course, but they didn't see it in time. And they hit the bar, and 259 people were on board and 189 perished. So that is their worst shipwreck disaster. It is run by an organization I told you about that is dedicated to keeping this in good shape, which is always nice. It's always nice to have an organization do that. It's in the Manukau Harbor, and Manukau in Maori means waiting birds. So obviously there's a lot of those there. The next day we headed to lighthouse number 2. You can see up above there. And it's located out of Paia. Paia is in the Bay of Islands. And it's very famous for having sightseeing tours, lots of boats there to take you out to see the porpoises and the hole in the rock. As you can see, there's a hole in this rock. It also has the Matangi Treaty Grounds, and if you're there during the Matangi days, which is 6 February, it's a madhouse, as you can imagine, but it is commemorative of the Maori and English treaty signing in 6 February 1840.
Think our Independence Day.
Very much like it, yes.
Next slide. Just tap.
So across from that rock, hole in the rock, is a Cape Brett. And on that cape is this beautiful lighthouse. It was named after, Captain Cook named it, named after Admiral Sir Percy Brett. This was the scene of New Zealand's first outright shipwreck. The schooner Parramatta was blown ashore in 1808. So there's a nice little story about this. When they came ashore, they were all massacred. However, they had been there just previously, made an agreement with the Maori tribe for some goods, and taking some Maori people on board. When they got out to sea, they threw the Maori people overboard and shot at them, injuring 3 of them. So when they got out further, they got into a major storm that blew them right back into the Maori harbor. And of course, the Maori took vengeance and killed them all. So 1910 is when this lighthouse was built, and it is 500 feet above sea level. Right now, of course, like with all the lighthouses, it's all electric. You can reach it from a nearby town called Russell, but it's a very long walk. The little house you see down in the corner is used as a rental, as it said there. Lighthouse number 3 was the next day. Cape Reinga Lighthouse. Reinga means underworld in Maori language. And this is the place where the Maori believe your spirit jumps off into the underworld. This is the most northern lighthouse in New Zealand, and it's where the Tasman Sea and the Pacific Ocean meet. You can see the difference in the colors where the sea and the ocean meet. So this lighthouse, it has a long walk from the parking lot, and it's slanted and curved, but it was worth the walk. But there's lots of signs on the way. And one of the signs
is about, it talks about the tree, and this tree here, I'll zoom in a bit. It is a
Kahita tree, or it's called Kahita.
It's called Kahita, and the roots on this tree is considered the stepping stones that the dead take on their paths back to the sea. Next slide.
This lighthouse was built in 1941, which is pretty late for the lighthouses in New Zealand. But it replaced a lighthouse that was on Manitoupau Island. Forgive me for not pronouncing the Maori words. It was called the Cape Maria Van Diemen Lighthouse, named after a governor's wife from the Dutch Indies by Abel Tasman, who was exploring that area. And it was there, it was built in 1879, and it was there until this lighthouse took over. They decided in 1933, when an assistant lighthouse keeper's wife was swept off the rocks on that island, that lighthouse needed to go. They needed to replace it. So one of the ways that the way that we got up there to Cape Reinga was a special bus. And this bus takes you down the 90-mile beach, which is a New Zealand highway. And so you will see transportation on there. I'm not sure if it's 90 miles anymore. I think it's less than that, but they call it 90-mile beach road. Part of that trip that they give you is that dune rides that you see over on the side. They give you a boogie board, take you up to the top, and let you slide on down. They go up a river to do this. Well, unfortunately for our group, the day before, an individual started his dune run before he was told he could. And when he got to the bottom, there was a bus moving, and he did not survive. So we didn't get to do this, but the previous New Zealand Lighthouse tour that Skip and Marilee, or Dave Snyder ran, we got to do it on that one.
Instead, we got a beach comb, which is what the left-hand picture is.
Then we went to Kauri Museum. Kauri is a tree, a native tree that they used to have thousands of trees up in the north, and it is a very hardwood tree. You can see how big they get. Cassandra's standing next to a slice of one. We also got to see Tane Mahuta, the existing tree that is 2,000 years old. in the Waipua Forest. There's only 18,750 acres of Kauai trees left. This particular tree is 148 feet tall and 50.7 feet around. Pretty big and impressive. All right, now we're headed off to lighthouses 4, 5, and 6. Tiri Tiri Matangi. That is the name of the island as well as the lighthouse. And it is a bird sanctuary. The island is a bird sanctuary now. It's a cast iron. It was lit on January 1st, 1865. And of course, it's all on electric now, like all the rest. It has 2 one-story keeper's quarters. One's a visitor center and the other's a park ranger residence now. It also has a fog signal building, but they don't use it anymore. There are guided tours available.
But one of the interesting things that our group got to do was we got to go into the tower. We ended up hitting a little bit of a spot of luck and getting to see this gentleman. He was Ray Walter. He was the last keeper previously, and he stayed on as a park ranger afterwards, and we happened to meet him on the ferry across.
He was the lighthouse keeper until 1925. No, that's not right. No. Well, anyway, in 2006, he retired, so we were very fortunate for him to come out with us and open up the lighthouse for us. It was great. The staff was so excited because they've never been inside either, so they took the opportunity to go up as well.
Next slide.
So on the way out there on the ferry run, there, you can reach that island by ferry. You get to see these 2 lighthouses. Bean Rock was first lit in 1871. It's named after a Royal Navy lieutenant who surveyed and charted the harbor there in the 1840s. This was a livable lighthouse. They had families living there until 1912, when it was all automated and the keepers were withdrawn. It is now powered by electricity from the mainland. They did restore it in 1985, giving it new timber legs. And right now it also has solar power. Rangatoto light, the little light on the right there. It was built in 1882, but it did not get activated until 1905. The only explanation is that there was bureaucratic bickering that kept them from lighting it right away. It never had a lantern room. It only has a red light on the top. Now it's on a little rock formation, lava rock formation, just off of Rangatoto Island. And I will tell you that New Zealand is a lot of rock formations. It's a volcanic country. And as was witnessed in 2011 when they had the major earthquake around Christchurch. Now we're on our way to lighthouse number 7. But on the way, you can, if you want to go back to the map, can you go back?
Yep.
Yeah, you'll see from lighthouse 4, 5, and 6 all the way to 7. It's a long ways. So we stopped on the way. As Jeremy was explaining, we do more than just lighthouses on these when we get to an international country. We stopped at Hobbiton. It's just outside of Matamata, New Zealand. And for some of the tour participants, that was very important to them to be able to see the little Hobbiton community. They put you on a bus, take you on this farm where Hobbitown lives is still there, and you walk around and get to see all of the little structures. Most of them have just the door and the structure in front. There's nothing inside like in the movies. And then at the end, they take you to the local tavern where you can have some imbibement, alcohol or not non. And it was just a very enjoyable time.
Even with the heat that day.
It was a pretty hot day that day. Then we went to Rotorua. And Rotorua you can smell before you get there. A lot of volcanic actions and mud pools, and it smells like sulfur. But you got to walk around and see the geysers. You got to see the mud pools. So it was a nice time. We let the group have some free time during this stay so that they had a chance to go do some shopping. Some took advantage of the zip line that was available, the daring ones. Then the next day we went to the Agrodome sheep farm. I mean, you have to see sheep when you're in New Zealand, right? So they had all these sheep come in one at a time, and they're all different breeds. Hard to believe there's that many breeds of sheep, but there are. The man who put on the show, very entertaining. And even though we were counting sheep, we didn't fall asleep. Ba-dum-bum. Then we got on a tram and went around the farm tour. You can see they let us out to feed the animals. We got Terry and Pam feeding the alpacas. And there was a few other places we stopped. That evening, out of Rotorua, we went to a Maori dinner and show. This is when a group of Maoris put on a great show, showing you what it was like early in their life. They're a very fierce, war-like tribe. But they gave us a show of what village life was like. And they also had us choose a chief for the 2 divisions that were there. And Jerry was chosen as the chief of our division. The picture on the right kind of gives you an idea of the fierce warrior that was out doing a dance in front of us. And it was a good show, great show. Now we're on our way to Lighthouse number 7, finally.
Had to have some fun in between.
That's right. Wairoa Lighthouse. What a beautiful little lighthouse right on the Wairoa River. It was originally on the Portland Island off of Mahia Peninsula, but they moved it here in 1960. The name Wairoa in Maori comes from the Te Wairoa Hapapu Hangangane Matangi Rao, which means the long water which bubbles, swirls, and is uneven. And that was their description of the river. This lighthouse has a second order lens in it, and it's in beautiful shape. The group that takes care of it, they keep the whole lighthouse in great shape. And you can see the copper top. It was originally painted when they got it, and one of the people decided they were going to repaint the top, and they got up there and started scraping and saw that it was copper and said, no, we're going to take it all off and keep it copper. And it is a beautiful copper top lighthouse. They put it in a beautiful setting, nice little park area right near the river. You can see the bridge going over the river to the right. And you can see the size of it compared to the person standing there. The town was so excited to have us there. The mayor showed up. The local newspaper people showed up to interview us. It was really a warm welcome from them. And you get to see the lens in the next slide. You see what a great condition it's in.
Next slide.
On the way after that, we stopped at a place called Hookah Falls. It's the Hookah River. It goes from 328 feet across to 65 feet through this gorge and a 65-foot drop. So it's really booking through there. They say for every second, 58,180 gallons of water travel through the gorge. It's pretty high speed. It was a beautiful area and obviously a very popular attraction. On all lighthouse tours, we eat well. And this is one of the great places we stopped at, Mission Estate Winery, that served an excellent meal. And over to the right was our bus driver. He was a Maori gentleman that helped us out with pronouncing all the Maori words.
Or took over when we couldn't say them ourselves.
Yeah. And now off to lighthouse number 8. Castle Point Lighthouse. Captain Cook named this Castle Point because it looked like a castle to him, or the battlements of a castle. This was built in 1913. It originally had an oil lamp. It's right near a Castle Point beach, which is a very popular tourist attraction. And the light has become affectionately known as the Holiday Light. It was fully automated in 1988. There's a closer view of it. And what I really wanted to show you was in the right-hand picture here, you can see the parking lot across the way. That's where you park your car. But in order to get to the path to the lighthouse, you have to walk across the water. At one time, they had a causeway built, so you didn't have to do that. But in 2008, they had to tear it down because it was so deteriorated, so unsafe. So now, if you don't get there at the right time of tide, you don't get across. The day that we were there, it was very windy, but we all managed to make it across to go see the lighthouse. The very nice thing about this was the New Zealand Maritime Authority was there to meet us, opened up the lighthouse, and let us climb it. A very big privilege to do that. We were very thrilled. And this is their lens.
Another one in good condition.
Okay, now the next stop we make is at Wellington. And as you can see, the lights around Wellington are all over the place. Some in water, some accessible by land. So we thought before we went, the best way to see these is with a helicopter ride. So that's what we planned on. However, on the way, on that morning before that, we did a tour of Wellington. And here's the Wellington sign. And you can see the O and the N are up in the air. They have very windy conditions, and their sign indicates that. We went to Mount Victoria. And this is the view of Wellington from Mount Victoria. And then our first lighthouse on the land was this very unique checkerboard lighthouse, Point Halswell. It was named after a judge who died in 1874. It's octagonal concrete tower, black and white checkerboard pattern. And this particular spot has very tough, rough currents, fast currents, and it's a favorite spot for the shellfish divers to go down and get shellfish. But the lighthouse is important to them because it's kind of a memorial for the many divers that were lost, who died trying to get their seafood. Now, by land, we went to the Pencaros. Pencaro lighthouses. This particular one, called Lower Hat, was built in 1906. It took the place of the next lighthouse you're going to see. And it was a steel skeletal tower in 1906, but in 1930, they concreted around it. You can see it has solar panels that run it. Getting to this lighthouse is quite an adventure, even on bus, because it's gated road. And if you want to walk from the road to the lighthouse, it takes you 2 hours. There's no access to get on the road by public unless you've made special arrangements. And you have to go to the local city hall, pick up the key, and then you can enter the gate, but you have to close it behind you. And then at the end of your trip, you have to return the key. And that is all done with a $100 deposit. But we did, we took the bus out to this lighthouse. And then we also went to Pencaro Head Lighthouse, which is above on the cliff of this one. And it was built in 1859, but it was deactivated in 1935, and another lighthouse took its place. And the reason that they built the lighthouse, the previous lighthouse down on the beach, was because of fog. They had such low fog that the lighthouse up on the cliff, the ships couldn't see. So this lighthouse has quite a unique history. It is the first permanent lighthouse.
Of New Zealand.
Of New Zealand, yeah. And it was also the lighthouse that had the only female lighthouse keeper. From 1852, her and her husband George, her name was Mary Jane Bennett, her and her husband George would put a light from the window in their house. And then in 1859, the lighthouse was built. But in 1855, George died in a boat accident. So she was left to take care of the lighthouse plus raise 6 kids.
And she was pregnant at the time.
When George died, she was pregnant, yes. So the next picture shows Mary Jane Bennett with 5 of her kids. And the 6th one, Eliza, her grave is very close to the lighthouse. And she died when she was 5 years old. In 1865, Mary Jane decided her children needed better education, so she took them back to England. But in 1871, her youngest son, William, came back and became the assistant lighthouse keeper of this light. Okay. And this shows you where they're located, how close they are, how one's on the shore and one's up on the cliff, 354 feet above sea level. Excellent. So we're off to the helicopter ride. The helicopter would take 6 people. That's me and Jerry on the right, then the pilot, then Cassandra, Ralph, and Evelyn Eshelman, and Sally Welch. We're the last ones to go on the helicopter. The people that were not on the helicopter got the opportunity to go to the nearby Maritime Museum or take whatever time they wanted to explore Wellington. Then we had a designated time to meet at the Maritime Museum with the bus to take them back to the hotel. This is the first light that we saw on the helicopter trip, and it is just a light. It's 20-foot round concrete tower. They don't even have in record when it was built, so I can't even give you that. But it's still there and it's still active. Then we had Somes Island Lighthouse. And it is on Somes Island. It's also called Matewi Island, named after a Maori chief. This island was used as a quarantine station for both people and animals until 1995. Nobody could go on there without special permissions. Now it's an ecological survey and sanctuary for wildlife, and you can get to it by ferry. Next light was a rear range light, Hope Shoal, built in 1915, still active. And then the next light was the front light. And then Bering Head Lighthouse. This is the lighthouse that took the place of Pencarrow Head Lighthouse, the one on the cliff. It was built in and started operation in 1935. You can get to it by road, but it's a long ways to get there. Karari Rock Lighthouse has quite a history in that they were started to build it, and the first attempt was washed away by the sea, but they finally got it built, and it started operation in 1915. Well, by 1996, it was so dangerous to get there, nobody wanted to go out there. They deactivated it, and they have another lighthouse, the next one you're going to see, that took its place. So Karari Rock, why is it leaning? Nobody can give us this answer. I've done a lot of research on it. We asked the people in the local area, why is it built this way? And nobody could give us an answer. The nearest thing I can think of is, since they have a ladder that is on one side, rather than have it go straight up and down, they wanted it to be on a slant. That's the only explanation I can come up with. Now, Karori in Maori means the rope of bird snares. Why they named it that, I don't know, but it is called the Leaning Lighthouse in Wellington. And this is the last lighthouse we saw, Tongue Point Lighthouse. And as I said, it was built and activated in 1996. And you can get to it by land with four-wheel drive. But we saw it from the air. And that's it. Most of the lighthouses we saw on this trip were on the North Island, like I said before. We saw a total of 25, and 18 of them were on the North Island.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Margie and Cassandra. And I guess I should thank Jerry too for not interrupting.
I get an awful lot on this one.
Yeah, moral support more than anything.
Yeah, well, you did a lot, I'm sure, planning and leading the tour. So at this point, we will open things up for questions, and there are two different ways we can do that. One is through the chat. So if people have questions, you can ask them in the chat, but also we can do it verbally. And those of you who are familiar with Zoom know that there's a hand raising option. So I might need Jeff's help for this, because again, and maybe the Rowlands too, because the host controls are different from everybody else's. But if you click on participants, you should see an option to raise your hand digitally, that is. Okay. So if you click on participants, you should, are people seeing that? You have the option to click a hand raising thing. And we will be able to see that if you quote, raise your hand. And you'll go to the, I'm looking at the participant list, and you'll go to the top of the list, and Jeff or I can pick on you and ask you to unmute yourself, and you can do that, and you can ask a question out loud. So we can do it that way too. So I hope that's clear what I just said. So we can either take questions in the chat, and we can take questions verbally. And I see we do have a question. Whoop, the person, I thought somebody had a question, but they unraised their hand, but now we have somebody else. We have Leslie Brott. So we have a couple of people. So just give me a second here. Let me, yeah, Leslie is already unmuted. I'm not sure if that's, okay. Where's Leslie?
You hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. There you go. You can go ahead and ask your question, Leslie.
I just had a question. When you were helicoptering, when you were seeing the lighthouses for the air, were you on the strait, on Cook Strait, or what body of water were you on? Like, I'm just curious where they are.
Mostly in the harbor. We got close to the strait on the last two lighthouses.
Okay, I was just curious.
Sure.
Oh,
And
Okay.
in fact, when we left the next day on the ferry, we got to see quite a few of those lighthouses from the ferry.
We just weren't sure if the conditions were going to be clear enough to see on when we took the ferry beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky on the helicopter ride. It was a beautiful day. Just a wonderful day for a helicopter ride.
That's always good. It's not windy for a helicopter ride. Okay. We have Earl Major has a question. You should be able to unmute yourself, Earl, wherever you are.
Hello.
Okay, you can go ahead. Yeah, hi, Earl.
Yeah, I had a question. I think it was the Castle Point Lighthouse that was up on the cliff.
Yeah.
I was thinking, are there issues with fogging down there? I mean, I was thinking about Old Point Loma Lighthouse in San Diego Harbor and how they had to build a new lighthouse down at the base of the cliff because of the old one was basically made obsolete as soon as they built it. And I was wondering if they have similar problems down there. That lighthouse looked to be pretty tall on that cliff.
Well, Castle Point, they don't so much because it's right on the ocean. So then with a lot of wind, it was very windy the day that we were there. Where that is, they had the similar problem as Old Point Loma was the Pancaros. The Pancaro light up on the cliff, they couldn't see it, so they built the one down on the shore. Yeah, into Wellington.
And just one other question. I understand that New Zealand sits on top of two tectonic plates.
Correct.
Where they converge, and I think the nickname is the Shaky Isles. I think is the nickname. Have any of the lighthouses been damaged over time because of the earthquakes?
Yes, we saw one of the lighthouses on the South Island on our first New Zealand trip. I don't remember the name of it right now, but we were going to schedule seeing it on this New Zealand trip, and it no longer existed. It had been shook down the hill. It was on a little cliff, and it went.
Right out of Christchurch. I can't
Okay.
remember the name of it.
It's out of Christchurch, yeah.
So,
Okay.
yes, they have lost at least one lighthouse for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Okay, I just want to mention that I just posted a link in the chat. It's a link to Maritime New Zealand. They have a section of their website that's devoted to information on the lighthouses. So if you want to read more, there's quite a bit there. You might want to check that out if you want to follow that link. So let's see here. We have Alan Loomis has a question. Alan, you should be able to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. Where's Alan?
I don't have a question.
Oh,
Oh, you
okay.
Well,
You raised
it's
your
nice
hand.
to see you.
Same here, Roy. Yeah, I like Jerry in the background.
He was demonstrating how to raise the hand to me.
Yeah, I don't know, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Roger Gabin. Let's see here. Asked to unmute. You should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself, Roger, and go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. First of all, I love your podcasts. But
Thank you.
The specific question is, I didn't quite hear what happened on the dune ride the day before that canceled the.
Whoop.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, we lost you. We heard the beginning of what you were saying, Roger, but then the sound went kind of.
Well, I heard what he said.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I heard what he said. He wanted to know why we couldn't slide down the dunes.
Oh, that's funny. I lost.
Because the day before, a fellow went ahead and slid down his board. They're supposed to wait and be told it's okay. Well, he went ahead, and when he got to the bottom, there was a bus moving, and he did not survive.
He went underneath the bus and
Yep.
got ran over.
Yep, he went under the bus.
Yikes. Okay, thank you, Roger. And I'm not seeing any other questions.
That's good. That means we were very thorough, huh?
Yes, you were.
Riley's raising her hand. Oh, there's a couple more.
Oh yeah, a couple of questions just came up. Okay, Riley Toretti, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, you had.
Whoop.
Sorry, my mom's here too.
There you go.
You had said that you climbed 7 lighthouses on the South Island, or you visited 7 lighthouses on the South Island. I was curious which, or if you were able to climb any of those.
Well, we are going to do a presentation on those because we wanted to not only show those, but the beautiful South Island.
That'll be a whole separate thing.
Yeah, it'll be a whole separate one. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any of them that we climbed down there.
When will the presentation be on that? Do you know?
It'll probably be a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks out.
Yeah, I studied abroad on the South Island 2 years ago, so I know more of those ones.
Yeah. Beautiful South Island.
Okay, great. Okay, and I thought there was somebody else with a question, but Earl, did you have another question? If so, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I was just noticing the lighthouses in New Zealand are not what you would consider typical lighthouses with first, second, or third order lenses and, you know, towers and such. Is it that there's not a need for high visibility beacon way out to sea, or are they just channel markers? I guess I was just trying to figure out the key differences there.
The lighthouses near the ocean do have the Fresnel lenses, the third, second order lenses. But the ones in the harbor do not. And we showed you a lot of harbor ones as well as the ocean ones. So it's like here, the harbor lights don't require the range. And of course, just like here, a lot of the lights have been converted to LED beams rather than the beautiful Fresnel lenses that we love.
With the modern optic.
You'll also notice that a lot of them are high on cliffs.
That's what I was going to mention, yeah.
Up on cliffs.
Okay.
Gives them a long range with a smaller light.
Yeah.
Right. You can have a short lighthouse up on a high cliff that still has a 25-mile range because it's so high above the water.
All right. Thanks for
that. Anybody else? Let's see. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point. Jeff, did you want to add anything about any plans for other upcoming presentations? Anything about that you might want to say?
No, other than the fact that because of COVID, we've had to cancel a lot of our tours this year already. Most of our European tours have been canceled. Actually, instead of saying cancel, I should say we're postponing them. Most are just being pushed back 12 months so that they can have an opportunity to operate without quarantine. It doesn't make sense to operate a tour in Europe where you have to spend the first 2 weeks in quarantine, so that doesn't work for us, obviously. But it looks like if all goes as planned, we will operate a trip in August. It'll be our Lake Huron tour, and so far so good. Everything seems to be falling into place. You know, but of course, with the situation, things changed, and with the rise in cases now, we don't know how it'll affect things. But you know, keep your fingers crossed that our Lake Huron tour will operate, and then from there, we may get lucky and operate one more. But I think the best case scenario, unfortunately for the society, is that only 2 trips potentially this year will operate. So what that means is that we're looking forward to an excellent 2021 and 2022.
Correct.
Yeah. I know Maine just kind of pulled back on their partial reopening. So I don't know, that kind of puts the Maine trip in jeopardy, I would say.
Yeah, we were advised by the folks in Maine that they're not even opening up for the fall colors or anything. So they pretty much canceled all of their incoming trips, and no cruise ships are landing out there either. So it's a pretty serious situation for lots of places in the nation that have tourism. And certainly the society is affected because, you know, a lot of what we do is based on visiting lighthouses. Even the lighthouses that aren't part of our tours are struggling. That's why recently we've donated, we're in the process of donating many thousands of dollars to lighthouses to help them support themselves through, because they're closed. So with all of our members' help, we're able to do that. It's pretty exciting, actually. It's just unfortunately a little bit, doesn't go a long way in this day and age, but you know, we're doing our best to try to put a Band-Aid on a very serious situation.
Right.
If I can, I'm not sure how to raise my hand other than to do this.
That's fine. Go ahead.
I was out on the Thomas Point Lighthouse right there
Yep.
Thursday for preservation work. And by the way, it looks excellent. We raised over $300,000 over the last couple of years to replace the hips and joints on the screw piles. However, we've had to cancel the tours for the rest of the season, so that's through October. The captain was just, the boat that takes us out for the tours was just too reluctant in this situation, even though Maryland is doing rather well as far as the virus is concerned.
Yeah. Most lighthouses in the country are closed. Most ones that are offshore and do tours are not doing it, or are doing it in a very limited way. Some are doing it by reservation with smaller groups than usual. And by the way, Jeff, I haven't mentioned to you, but I spoke with Don Terrace a couple of days ago. Have you talked to him about what he's actually doing, kind of a study of how groups are dealing with the pandemic?
You might want to tell everybody who he is.
Don Terrace is the director of the lighthouse at Grosse Pointe in Illinois. He's been there for, I think, 36 years now.
Yeah, and he actually is a lighthouse keeper. He lives on site. He's done it for many years.
Right. He's been one of the leaders in lighthouse preservation in the country for a long time. So he is doing a kind of a survey of how groups are reacting to this. I hope it doesn't need to be for future reference, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's good somebody should be doing that. So I'm glad he's talking to everybody about what's happening. We have two people waiting to get into the meeting. Should we let them in, or is it worth doing at this point?
Well, they must have got the wrong time. We are gonna put this on the website though, right?
Yes, good. I'm glad you mentioned that, Margie. Very good. Yeah, I will be doing a little bit of editing to this on the next, it'll be within a few days. I can't promise exactly when it'll be, but it'll be within a few days that it'll be on the US Lighthouse Society YouTube channel, and also on the US Lighthouse Society website. There's a page that has the tour retrospective programs, so it'll be in both places. And we send out an email to the entire mailing list, right, Jeff, when that? Yeah,
everybody will receive a message when it's posted.
Yeah, so you'll find out about that. So you can relive the experience yet again. So that will be.
I have a question for Jeff.
Okay, who's speaking? Phil? Is that who's speaking? No, who's speaking? I
have a question. Yeah, Bruce and I are signed up for the Lighthouse trip to South Carolina and Georgia in September.
And they are one of the red states at the moment that are, really, really in trouble with cases of COVID. So, Lake Huron may be going in August, but what the heck's happening in September?
Well, again, it's unfortunately it's a week by week situation because things change every week. So what we've done is we've already postponed South Carolina, Georgia once. And, and so our typical method operandi is a 45-day window. If things aren't looking good and within a 45-day window, then we'll make a decision whether to postpone it until next year or operate. So unfortunately, I can't tell you now what will happen, but if things improve there the way they had in Michigan, we might be able to operate it, but it is a question mark. And unfortunately, we can't give you any more information than that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
But everybody should realize too that our policy is very lenient. If we have to adjust a tour like that, everybody's entitled to refunds. There's no financial risk other than the fact that if you make reservations for airlines and other extra things above and beyond the tour, that's on you. But as far as the money goes to the society, all of that is all refundable. So hopefully a short window is easy for people to deal with, a 45-day window.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions either from hand raisers or in the chat. Marjie, Cassandra, Jerry, do you have anything else you'd like to add at this point?
Just welcome everybody. That glad that they showed up and experience a little bit of New Zealand. It's a wonderful country to visit, and they get the opportunity to go on our next New Zealand Lighthouse tour. I would recommend it. And kia ora.
And we're gonna, the next few of these coming up, just to give you advance, will be the Southern New Zealand with Marjie, Jerry, and Cassandra again. And then we have somebody working on our Scotland, England tour, which was a combination tour between the two countries. And we have Chris will be coming back with his Baltic tour, which was an amazing trip to the lighthouses of Finland and Estonia and areas in the Baltic.
And I took part in the England-Scotland tour, and it was amazing, but I have not been to New Zealand or these other places, but this is the next best thing. So thank you, Rowland family. You do an amazing job, and this was great today. Thank you all for attending, for taking part in this. We really appreciate it. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for listening to Lighthearted. I hope a lot of you listen to that. Again, it's the podcast of the US Lighthouse Society. You listen through the website or through your favorite podcast app. So Jeff, you want to add anything?
No, that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Bye.